I'm jacjson, and I hate being late. Unfortunately, I'm 72 hours late to the Brackeys Game Jam, which means instead of having a week to make this game, I only have 4 days. I only found out about the theme while scrolling through YouTube, that being, an end is a new beginning. I wasn't sure how to make Buddhism into a video game, so I did the opposite. Kill everything!
As per usual, I started my game by making character sprites. I like colors, so I picked this color palette that has most of them.
There's no red though. That's because I hate color red!
This little sword fighter guy is the player. After much debate, I decided to give him the worst style imaginable. Those people are criminally underrepresented in gaming. I dropped him into Unity with some basic ground tiles and started working on the movement. I gave him a run, jump, and sword swing, along with a little boost when you swing your sword in the air. The movement wasn't going to be the interesting part of this game, that was going to be the enemies. To work out the sword collider, I made a fake enemy first, this pot. It's harmless, but it breaks when you hit it, which will have people everywhere shouting,
Reference!
Considering my job there done, I made a classic tutorial sign.
The HOA is gonna kill me for this one.
After destroying the pot, this cool portal takes you to the next screen. The idea I had for the theme was, depending on the tile you were on, it would take you to a specific new screen.
So if I broke it from here, I'd end up here. But if I broke it from here, I'd end up here.
The problem with this is that there are 128 tiles. That means I have to make 128 different screens.
That's way more than 5.
My initial plan was to make 32 screens each day to pace it out. By day 2, my plan was to make 44 screens each day. On day 3, I was gonna do 64 each day.
So I made 128 levels in the span of 4 hours.
The next question was how I would load each level. With most programming, you can do some kind of loop to make the computer figure out what you wanted it to do. In this case, the computer would figure out what tile the player is on, somehow link that to a list of levels, and choose the right one based on information. Unfortunately, I don't know how to do that. Instead, this is my solution.
This line asks if the player is in the top left tile. If they are, it loads the first screen. This line asks if they're in the next tile. If they are, it loads the second screen.
I did that 126 more times, resulting in 512 lines of brain-dead level script. This is what my code looked like after that. With all the work I put into this, here are some notable levels. In screen 1, I reward you for somehow winning in the top leftmost square. I don't think it's even possible to get here. In screen 8, you're presented with a difficult position, left or right. If you have enemies spawn on both sides of the platform, this is a problematic dilemma. However, you'll soon find out that the bottom leftmost tile is fake. Screen 9 contains my next mean trick for the player, a soft lock. But I try to be really obvious about it by putting a big sign that says pit. If the player can't analyze that and figure out you don't want to go down there, then they probably shouldn't be a game journalist.
Breaking news! Game journalist gets trapped in pit labeled pit. 1-star reviews ensue.
After making the first row of screens, I had a thought cross my mind. What if you could die? I had already programmed a death animation for enemies, but I was worried how having a gaping hole in the level would affect the player death and the enemy death. The short answer? It didn't. I programmed anything with a pulse to die below y = -5.
They didn't have a pulse. I mean, they could have had a pulse. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. My high score in Dr. Mario is 3 ounces.
My personal favorite is screen 17. It's simple, it's a clear path, and it takes up the whole screen. I liked it so much that I copied it in screen 120. This one, screen 25, is awful. If you aren't killed at spawn, you're bound to have some enemies trapped in the wall. Not to mention that fighting on the stairs is an absolute nightmare. If you find yourself on screen 25, it's time to close the application. It's not worth it anymore. Skipping ahead to screen 65, I introduced the arrows. If you touch these, they'll bounce you to the top of the screen. It's a neat gimmick that I threw into 4 of the levels, and if I could change anything about how I made this game, it would be to add more of these little gimmicks. In any platformer, the most fun parts are the ones where developers try new things and surprise you. In hindsight, that'll definitely be what I focus on for the next one. Now on to the enemies. When I was planning the enemies, I had only one thought in my mind.
Snake.
And so, the first enemy. This red snake. I programmed it to only move during the slither animation, giving it the realistic snake-like appearance. It looks just like the real thing. I also made it inch in the direction of the player, a major development in enemy AI. Riding on the high of the small red snake, I decided to do what every good game developer does.
Release in early access?
No, I made a reskin. The small yellow snake is almost exactly the same as the red one, but its preferred method of movement is with a short hop. At one point, it could take 3 hits from the sword instead of 2, but that made the game too hard. As a game developer, the fun of the player is the most important thing to me.
That's a good one.
For the next enemy, I turned away from snakes and towards flying things that aren't snakes. Here's my thought process.
Not a snake.
My flying object became this pink pincered prowler that swoops down when it's above the player. I'm pretty proud of its neutral and attacking animations, so it's too bad that the dark background obscures them a ton. They take the most strategy of any of the enemies because you have to bait them down and avoid them.
Write that down! Write that down!
But here's an insider tip. The sword hitbox extends pretty far above and below the player, so you can stand and just hit it out of the air.
Cross that off! Cross that off!
In a daring return to the snake motif, I wanted to make a new snake. It would move around like the red snake, but when it saw the player, it would leap at them like the yellow snake. The difficulty in this was getting the new purple snake to see the player. I put in some raycasts, which are visualized by the red lines here. When the red lines touch the player, the snake should launch itself in that direction.
To be fair, it does.
What's happening here is the raycast triggers the launch every frame that is touching the player, including all of these frames when it's already launching. This results in a huge buildup of speed and this cool gameplay mechanic. Going down the list of obvious answers, I tried just disabling the raycast when the purple snake was launching. As if I used tackle on a ghastly, it had no effect. I gave up and just made it a clone of the red snake. Finally, I made one more enemy. A snake in a pot. When you hit the pot, a red snake comes out. This is by far my favorite enemy. Just to make sure the player can tell there's a snake in the pot, I made this happen if you died to it. There's a snake in that pot. Oh no, not voice acting. After 3 days, that was the sum total of what I made. On the last day, I finished up the levels, added a score counter and a countdown timer, and made this awesome portal for the level transitions. I found a major bug where the enemies would spawn in the walls, so instead of fixing it, I put in a reset button.
I'm ready to work at Game Freak!
I loaded the game up with tons of sound. The sound of the sword, the sound of borscht, the sound of death, and the sound of the portal. But with only a couple of hours remaining, I felt like I was missing something big.
Where's the sound of music? Here it is on Disney+.
I went to a shared music file between me and my best friend Fireteko and stole one of his songs to put in.
I feel bad about that, so you should check his YouTube channel out in the description. He hasn't uploaded in a long time, but he has awesome music there.
Uploading a game to a game jam felt great, especially since it's been such a long time. It's definitely not my best game, but just submitting something is an accomplishment. There are a couple weeks until the results come out, but here are some of my favorite comments so far. Cool, says ProCoder77. Was fun and funny when I smashed the pot, and suddenly a pink blob killed me. Smile. From the wrong John.
That's the most passive-aggressive thing I've ever read.
I am an artist, says Olteanu, and my advice to you is to learn a little about background and player.
The guy is bright yellow, I don't know what you want from me. Clearly the people love it. Jokes aside, I certainly could have put more effort into this game, but I'll make up for it by putting lots of effort into this video? I'll put tons of effort into this video.